Have you ever wondered what the Cold War was all about? You've probably heard the term, seen it in movies, or read about it in history books. But what was this decades-long conflict that shaped the world we live in today? Stick around, because we're about to break down one of the most fascinating and tense periods in modern history. So, what exactly was the Cold War? Imagine a global rivalry, a massive staring contest between the world's two new superpowers after World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union. This wasn't a hot war with direct, large-scale fighting between them. Instead, it was a war of ideas, of influence, of threats, and of indirect conflicts fought all over the globe. On one side, you had the United States and its allies, championing capitalism and democracy. On the other, the Soviet Union and its bloc promoting communism. This ideological clash defined international politics for nearly half a century, from the late 1940s all the way to the early 1990s. To really get it, we need to go back to its roots. During World War II, the US and the Soviet Union were actually allies, united against a common enemy. But this alliance was more of a temporary convenience than a genuine friendship. Their political and economic systems were polar opposites. Once the war ended, the cracks began to show. Both nations emerged as the world's dominant powers, but they had very different visions for the future of Europe and the world. The Soviet Union wanted to create a buffer zone of friendly communist states in Eastern Europe to protect itself from future invasion. The US and its Western allies saw this as aggressive expansion and a threat to freedom. This mutual distrust laid the foundation for the conflict to come. The tension didn't take long to boil over. One of the first major flashpoints was the Berlin blockade in 1948. After the war, Germany and its capital, Berlin, were divided into 4 zones controlled by the US, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union. Berlin was deep inside Soviet-controlled East Germany. When the Western powers decided to introduce a new currency in their zones, Stalin saw it as a threat. He cut off all land and water access to West Berlin, hoping to starve the city into submission. The West's response? The Berlin airlift. For nearly a year, American and British planes flew around the clock, delivering food, fuel, and supplies to the more than 2 million people in West Berlin. It was a massive logistical feat and a huge symbolic victory for the West. This crisis solidified the division of Europe. In 1949, the United States and its allies formed the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, a military alliance based on collective defense. An attack on one member was considered an attack on all. The message to the Soviets was clear: don't mess with us. In response, the Soviet Union and its Eastern European satellite states formed their own military alliance in 1955, the Warsaw Pact. The Iron Curtain, a term famously coined by Winston Churchill, had now descended across Europe, dividing the continent into 2 armed camps. And then came the bomb. For a few years after World War II, the US was the only country with nuclear weapons. This gave them a huge strategic advantage. But in 1949, the Soviets successfully tested their own atomic bomb. The game had changed. This kicked off a terrifying arms race, a frantic competition to build more and more powerful nuclear weapons. Both sides developed hydrogen bombs, which were hundreds of times more powerful than the atomic bombs dropped on Japan. They built massive arsenals of intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, that could deliver nuclear warheads to any city on the planet in under 30 minutes. This created a new kind of terror, a doctrine known as mutually assured destruction, or MAD. The logic was chilling but simple: if either side launched a nuclear attack, the other would retaliate, leading to the complete annihilation of both. This delicate balance of terror, as scary as it was, likely prevented a direct war between the superpowers. While the US and USSR never fought directly, they waged war by proxy. They backed opposing sides in conflicts all over the world. The first major proxy war was the Korean War, from 1950 to 1953. After World War II, Korea was divided at the 38th parallel. The North was backed by the Soviets and China, and the South was supported by the US and the United Nations. When North Korean troops invaded the South, it sparked a brutal 3-year conflict that drew in major world powers and ended in a stalemate, cementing the division that still exists today. But the moment the world held its breath was the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962. It began when an American spy plane discovered that the Soviet Union was secretly installing nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of Florida. These missiles could strike major American cities within minutes. President John F. Kennedy responded by imposing a naval quarantine around Cuba to block further shipments. For 13 terrifying days, the world stood on the brink of nuclear war. Tense negotiations happened behind the scenes, and finally a deal was struck. The Soviets agreed to remove the missiles in exchange for a U.S. pledge not to invade Cuba and a secret agreement to remove used missiles from Turkey. It was the closest the world has ever come to a nuclear apocalypse. The Cold War wasn't just fought on the battlefield. It was also fought in laboratories and launch pads. A space race was another key arena of competition. It kicked off in 1957 when the Soviet Union stunned the world by launching Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. The US was shocked, fearing they were falling behind technologically. This spurred a massive investment in science and education. The Soviets scored another victory by sending the first man, Yuri Gagarin, into space in 1961. Not to be outdone, President Kennedy boldly declared that the US would land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. And in 1969, Neil Armstrong took that one small step, a monumental achievement for humanity and a major propaganda win for the United States. Back home, the Cold War had a profound impact on society. In the United States, the fear of communism fueled a period known as the Red Scare. People were terrified that communist spies and sympathizers were secretly undermining the country. This paranoia was exploited by politicians like Senator Joseph McCarthy, who led highly publicized but often baseless investigations, ruining the careers and lives of many innocent people. The Cold War influenced everything from movies and pop culture to education and even the construction of the interstate highway system, which was partly justified as a way to quickly move troops and supplies in a national emergency. So how did it all end? By the 1980s, the Soviet Union was in deep trouble. Its centrally planned economy was stagnant, and the enormous cost of the arms race and the war in Afghanistan was crippling. A new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, came to power in 1985 and realized that drastic changes were needed. He introduced two revolutionary policies: glasnost, meaning openness, which allowed for more freedom of speech and criticism of the government, and perestroika, meaning restructuring, which aimed to reform the sluggish Soviet economy. These reforms unleashed forces that Gorbachev couldn't control. People across Eastern Europe, emboldened by this new openness, began to demand change. The symbolic end of the Cold War came on November 9, 1989, with the fall of the Berlin Wall. For decades, the wall had been the most potent symbol of the Cold War's division. When East German authorities unexpectedly announced that citizens could cross the border, thousands of people streamed to the wall, chanting and celebrating. They began to tear it down with hammers and chisels, piece by piece. It was a powerful, emotional moment broadcast live around the world. One by one, communist regimes across Eastern Europe collapsed. The momentum was unstoppable. Finally, in December 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolved, formally ending the Cold War. The legacy of the Cold War is immense. It shaped the political map of the modern world, influenced military strategy, and drove incredible technological advancements. It left us with a world dominated by a single superpower, the United States, for a time, and it created many of the geopolitical hotspots we still deal with today. Understanding the Cold War is essential to understanding the world we live in now, from the alliances that bind nations together to the tensions that still pull them apart. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the Cold War. If you found this interesting, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more history explainers, and let us know in the comments what topic you'd like us to cover next. See you in the next video.